It just legitimately doesn't feel right, does it? It just doesn't. Like, I'm sitting here looking, and tomorrow is Sunday, September the 13th. Week one games really get underway for the NFL season. You already had the Thursday night game with the Texans going down to the Chiefs. Like, this would be the time of year to be really excited, really pumped up, and da 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 da. And maybe part of that is due to being a Bears fan and not having what I feel like is a ton of reason to be optimistic about what it's certainly going to be a lost year in one form or another. It's just in general, like it's just weird. Like it's 2020 for you. Like nothing feels right. You try to find some sort of semblance of normalcy, and it's just not there. Like you do your best to try and get away from it, but the drag of the suck that has been 2020 is impossible to escape, and it just seems to follow you everywhere. So that said, though, it is nice to still be able to have some type of escape, to be able to try and immerse at least myself, and certainly I'm sure for other folks, immerse myself in something else and immerse myself in some type of distraction. We can all use distractions, and right now especially. And I know I am certainly welcoming the 2020 NFL season as a distraction for me for the next few months. Hopefully, actually making it through all of the season. So, with that, it's time to talk about the Week 1 matchup. The Chicago Bears head up to Detroit to take on Matt Patricia, Matthew Stafford, and the Detroit Lions. When you look at this matchup on paper, the Bears coming off of a surely disappointing 8-8 season in 2019, rolling out Trubisky instead of Nick Foles in Week 1 to start the year. It'd be really interesting to see how Trubisky responds with Foles kind of breathing down his neck, with Foles kind of there. Because on the one hand, with Chase Daniel there was never really a threat unless he was truly, truly terrible that Trubisky was going to get pulled. Well, with Foles, it's at least a little different. With Foles, it is a slightly different scenario and situation. So as a result, pressure's going to be on. It's going to be on from day one. And either the kid does something better than he's done or he just plays like Trubisky. For the Bears, it looks like they won't have Robert Quinn on Sunday. This was the big free agent acquisition they brought in from the Dallas Cowboys to be the complimentary edge rusher to Khalil Mack in that defense. It looks like, at least based off the time I'm recording this, that he will not be in fold in game number 1. So yeehaw to all of that. Big signing not there at the beginning of the year. Good news for the Bears, though. They come into this game winners of the last 4 games in this rivalry. They won both of them in 2018. They won both of them in 2019. On the flip side of the scale, the Detroit Lions certainly had a crushing, disappointing season in 2019, finishing 3-12-1. Guys like Matthew Stafford only played half a season. Kerryon Johnson only played half a season, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There is no question that even with Matthew Stafford back at the helm and healthy, which is good news for Lions fans, because your alternatives are what exactly? Matt Patricia is certainly on the hot seat. So the pressure is there. The pressure is there early in the year for this team to get off to a good start. If not, it could get ugly very, very quickly in Detroit. And of course, going into that type of environment, it looks like there's a possibility that Kenny Golladay may not play. So you get Matthew Stafford back, and of course, being the Lions, his number 1 target, Golladay, may not play. Now, I believe he's listed at the moment as questionable, so he could. It was sounding before that he might be doubtful. We'll see what happens. But looking at this, it's interesting to me how some of these teams, like the Bears, potentially no Robert Quinn, the Lions, potentially no Kenny Golladay. This is all with no preseason games. This is just practice, man. Guys aren't even getting injured in games. They're getting injured in practice. Practice. You see the practical applicability of Allen Iverson's great speech all those years ago? Just phenomenal stuff. Well, when you look back at what happened in 2019 in the 2 games that these 2 teams played against each other, the Bears, like I mentioned before, won both of the matchups. The Bears won the first game 20-13. It was Jeff Driscoll at the time that was behind center for the Detroit Lions. Trubisky didn't have exactly the best day in the world, but he did throw for 3 touchdown passes, which was enough to beat them. The second matchup, the Bears came from behind. If you remember late, I think it was Trubisky threw the touchdown pass to David Montgomery with a little more than 2 minutes left in the game, and they ended up winning 24-20. It was David Blau that time that was behind center for the Lions. Trubisky did throw for 338 yards and 3 touchdowns, and certainly I think for the Bears organization, perhaps for Bears fans, are looking at the fact that Trubisky threw 6 touchdowns in the 2 games against the Lions last year and hoping that they'll be able to see more of that on Sunday. And with the recent success he's had against Detroit, feeling like maybe that's a justification to start in Week 1. I don't know. I guess we will find out soon enough. When you look at kind of the keys to victory here in this matchup for the Bears, they do need Trubisky. He doesn't have to light the world on fire, but he can't be total buster bad. He cannot be total buster bad. He just can't be. If he's similar to what he did against the Lions in 2019, then you probably feel okay. The run defense needs to make sure they do their part to help make the Lions and force the Lions to be one-dimensional offensively. If the Lions get that running game going and get that running game going early, it's not about establishing a run, they establish the pass. No, it's about balancing out the offense. It's about creating that element of unpredictability. You still have to be able to run the ball some in the National Football League. There is no question about that. And if the Bears can make the Lions one dimensional, which they've been for so long in Matthew Stafford's tenure as the quarterback for the Detroit Lions, it's going to bode well for their success. And then I look at that defense of the Bears and I say Jalen Johnson's got to do a good job of holding up outside. Now we'll see whether he's going to end up matching up against a Marvin Jones or somebody else. But this is a pressure spot, second round pick, going to be starting first game in the NFL. Those are the types of guys a veteran quarterback like Stafford are going to look at and say, I could throw at Kyle Fuller, I'm going to test the kid Jalen Johnson. This kid's going to get tested. He's going to get tested early. He's going to get tested often. And if he can hold up and he can hold up well out there, chances bode well for a Bears victory. For the Lions, as I referenced, we'll talk about the Bears, one of those keys, I've got to establish some type of balance in the running game early on. Some combination of Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Adrian Peterson. I don't know where it comes from, and I don't care where it comes from, but if they're going to win this game, they need to be able to get something on the ground. They got to do something to be able to keep the Bears off balance a little bit. They got to be able to do something to take some of the pressure off of Matthew Stafford and open up some things in the passing game, which is especially even more critical if Kenny Golladay ends up being limited or not playing at all. When you talk about that passing game, they got to get T.J. Hockenson going early. Like if you want him to be your George Kittle, now is the time to try and establish him as such. And you talk about the kid that they took, 8th overall last year out of Iowa. He had some flashes and moments in 2019, but certainly not the type of season you would have expected out of him for taking the tight end that high. But when you look at the Bears, they had some troubles and some struggles. They were bottom half of the league against tight ends last year. The matchup is there for this Lions offense. Get it to Hockenson, get it to him early. And if you could do that and you can get a big play or two from him, could throw the Bears defense in a little bit of disarray. And I think defensively for the Lions, they got to get some pressure on Trubisky early. Get him rattled. You're dealing with a kid with shaky confidence at that. The best way to get that to manifest and creep itself up into the picture early on is to get in his face, hit him a time or two, get him uncomfortable, get him off of his center of gravity, make him move his feet in an uncomfortable fashion. Because if you can do that, you're certainly going to have that's against Mitch. He's going to potentially be playing panicked and throwing the ball all over the damn place. When I look at this matchup, I say, this is a chance for the Bears on the road week 1 versus this is a chance for the Lions to get some good momentum to start off the year. And the reality is I don't know how this is going to look for either of these teams with no fans. Like, it's just hard to really know at this point. And you could look at the fact that the Bears have won 4 straight against the Lions in this rivalry and say that bodes well for them in this first game. And it certainly does. However, I can also point to the fact that the Chicago Bears, if my memory serves me correctly, haven't won in first game of the season since, I think, 2013. So you're going back to year 1 of the Mark Trestman era. So let's be clear here. Year 1, Mark Trestman era, is the last time the Bears won an opening game in the season. That's a long time. A long time. So that's a lot of history to overcome. And, you look at it here. Trubisky's 0-2 as a starter on opening day. Matt Nagy, the head coach, is 0-2 as a starter on opening day. You could say a couple of those games, 3 of them at least, were against the Packers on opening day, and especially the last 2 years, yes, not exactly the best draw for this team, but nonetheless, was who you have on the schedule week 1. And, the past couple of seasons when you talk about those Packers games, the big choke job in the second half in that 2018 opener, and then last year's opener, the offense was just absolutely non-existent. I mean, you put 3 points up on the board, you can't really expect to beat anybody in the National Football League. So my money here is going to have to go on the Lions at home. Opening game of the season, recent precedent. Bears beat them twice last year, yes, but they also didn't have Stafford. Uh, I got to go with the Lions. I think it's something like Detroit 16 and Bears 14, something along those lines. Um, I just learned my lesson from last year, trying to be too optimistic with the Bears and picking them to win too many games. I just have to be realistic. The money right now is on Detroit, and certainly understandably so to me. Um, Hope I'm wrong come Sunday, but I'm not feeling good about this week 1 matchup.